Exactly. Welcome, everyone. So the connected car has been something that we have all been talking about for a long time. And V2X connectivity is said to be an essential part of this. So I believe you have all individually prepared some statements, actually. And I would like to open with Patrick. We have confronted you with the question, how is connectivity changing the driving experience and the way people use transportation?
Yeah, so there are a lot of transformations going on in automotive right now, but I'd have to say that connectivity is the game changer. It's the horizontal platform that's really touching everything from autonomy to ride sharing, just everything. And so a lot has occurred in connectivity and connected cars over the last 15 years. So it started back maybe 2002 with GM OnStar, connecting the car for very simple emergency calls. And that was a powerful start to this whole connected car. From there, it evolved to, I think, diagnostics. A lot of automakers want to do diagnostics. And then they figured, hey, let's do this, since the modem's there, let's do over-the-air updates to our equipment and make sure that the car is as safe as possible and high quality and as reliable as possible. And so that was a very strong start to the connected car, but about 15 years ago. What we've been doing over the last 5 years is really concentrating on moving the mobile experience into the car, really connecting the person to the car and delivering this personalized experience. And so your cell phone is your frame of reference hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times a day. And so our goal was really to bring that same connection into the car, but in a slightly different way, in a safer way. And that's gone phenomenally well. At the beginning of this year, we launched a gigabit LTE modem to provide the bandwidth to be able to satisfy those types of data streaming, all the access you want for services to the cloud. So that went phenomenally well, and that is what we've been doing for the last 5 years. Now, last week we announced the cellular V2X, the first cellular V2X solution in the industry. And the purpose there, now that we've connected the person to the car, is now to connect the car to the world around it, which is actually a very powerful step towards autonomy. And so the vehicle connected to other vehicles to try to reduce the amount of collisions, to try to connect the vehicle to its infrastructure so it knows kind of where it's at in the city. The vehicle to the pedestrians. So if you have a pedestrian distracted stepping off a curb, the car will know that there could be a possible collision. And then, of course, the car has to connect to the network for all the HD maps and all the rest of it. So pretty powerful next step ahead of us. It's going to require a lot of infrastructure. I think that we've done the straightforward part, develop the modem, develop the system that will go in the car. Now it's a matter of deploying the infrastructure that can also talk to the car. And of course, this is well on its path to 5G. So the next step for us is to use 5G as an accelerant for all of this. Greater data bandwidth, much lower latency, much higher reliability. So the connected car has been a lot of fun to drive over the last 15 years. It's come an awful long way. I think it's starting to hit the knee of the inflection curve. Steve Mollenkopf, I think, mentioned a few minutes ago that the uptake on the connected car, it might be around 20% today. It's going to be 2/3, maybe 70% within the next 4 or 5 years. So we've certainly seen the knee of the curve in connected cars. Most of the automakers I talk to say that every car is going to be connected in the term of 5 to 7 years. Their plan is just to connect everything. So it's very exciting. A lot of great things going on. The path to 5G, the path to autonomy. I think cellular V2X is going to be absolutely a critical sensor in enabling autonomy to take place. So a lot of exciting things going on in the connected car. And again, I think it's that horizontal enabler going across all these transformations that's really going to empower the automobile to kind of move to its next steps.
Thank you very much. So Thierry, what are the current limitations? And what are possible solutions to a fully connected and integrated world? What is your take on that?
Sure, Max. So I'll build a little bit on what Patrick said. I think the fully connected, fully integrated world obviously has the connected car in it. But I want to elevate it a little bit and see that the car is really embedded in a smart city, smart home, smart building, smart environment, smart transportation. And we'll have billions of devices, things, people all connected. And we know how to connect them. We have a path with our wireless technology today. 4G technology is going to 5G that Patrick mentioned. We know how to connect them. We know how to send the data from the devices, from the sensors, machines to the cloud. But what I think we don't know And that's maybe the first limitation that I'll mention. I'll mention two. The first limitation is we don't really know how to access and share the data. How do we share the data between those that generate the data, those that own the data, those that process the data, and those that use the data? And in a lot of scenarios, those might be the same entities, but in a lot of scenarios, they might be very different. And I would suggest we need to create some sort of data marketplace for accessing and sharing the data, because the data is the new oil. And that's not, I didn't make that statement, but a lot of people have said that. So I think that kind of data marketplace for really distributing, sharing the data is one key limitation, one key solution that we need to look for. The second limitation is that now that we have all this data, what do we do with it? How do we really make sure we understand the data? We'll be generating terabytes of data every second, but how much of that data is really useful? How do we get knowledge from that data? We talk about big data, but I would actually think what's really important is little data. And little data is that one piece of information that's really important in all the amounts of bytes and bytes that we generate. And there's a big difference between data, information, and knowledge. And we need to look for that piece of knowledge that allows us to make these intelligent decisions. And at Nokia Bell Labs, we call that augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence, but augmented intelligence. And it's really how do we extract that information, that knowledge in the right context that allows you to make intelligent decisions. So those would be the two limitations I point out, and maybe ideas for how we can address them.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to elaborate on that. But just after I asked Oliver a question, what are the challenges, not only to connect cars with each other, but also to integrate other players of urban mobility in the connected world, like pedestrians and cyclists and so on?
Yeah, thanks for asking this, Max. So I think we all agree that connected mobility is a key in order to organize mobility, individual mobility in urban areas in the future. But as I'm a German, and Germans are famous for being a little bit critical, so let me start in a slightly different way. I mean, if I look here at EAA, or IAA, I mean, electric cars and autonomous driving is all over the place, right? But the way it's presented is in a very classic way, to my understanding. It's like super sports cars, as big SUVs, so as bigger as beautiful, more beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you look, I think somebody said this in the opening ceremony on Monday. The average speed in Tokyo is about 15 kilometers per hour right now. Mm-hmm. And having a sports car, even if it's electric, with 1,000 horsepower, actually does not make it any faster in Tokyo. So connected mobility and thinking about how we can really develop different systems to organize mobility is absolutely crucial to us. And I think here the new mobility world is absolutely the right approach, but I don't know about you. I feel the last 2 days, actually, this hasn't arrived at center stage of IAA. That's how I feel it. Mm-hmm. And I think that we currently do not really leverage the full potential of this topic here in Germany, but also at this fair. And that we are, basically in Germany would say, wir sind noch nicht richtig aus dem Quark gekommen. Mm-hmm. The polite translation is probably we haven't unfolded our full potential. Mm-hmm. So just this is a starting remark. I think there's a lot thing we still can achieve with this topic. So if it comes to connected mobility, I think very basically it's about connecting three things. We have a consumer who wants to come from A to B. We have cars or a train or whatever, a bus. And we have traffic infrastructure. And we need to connect these three elements. And the reason why Deutsche Telekom, and I'm representing Deutsche Telekom here, why we say connected mobility is a very strategic topic for us is because we think that we can actually leverage our core strengths in order to develop solutions for connected mobility. We have the consumer with the smartphone as a device, but also as a sensor. We have a long heritage in embedded systems and connected car. And we have technologies like 5G and narrowband IoT, which can be the enabling technology for connected scenarios. But besides these technologies, I think one thing we really need is, and I would describe this as more courage. That's how I feel it. I mean, I'm with Deutsche Telekom now since about 1.5 years. When I joined this company, there were, hundreds is probably too much, but there have been a lot of pilots we have done around parking, around every aspect of mobility you can think of. And I feel it's time to really roll out the solutions. I mean, just do it, but not do it as another pilot, do it on a big scale. Because only if you do this on a big scale, then the end consumer will benefit from it. I mean, if you have a parking solution and you just cover 10% of the parking spaces in a city like Frankfurt, actually the value to the consumer is close to zero. So you need to play this big. And I think this is something we in Deutsche Telekom decided as well, and I think big companies like Deutsche Telekom, they also have an obligation actually to drive this, because this will not work in classical business models. We need to have to establish new business models in order to drive this. And just to give you a short example, is one service we as Deutsche Telekom are going to launch in October is a smart parking service. So I just brought this with me. This is a parking sensor, an example for a parking sensor. And just to say it in advance, it will be available in different colors as well, so it has not to be magenta. But this is a solution where we want to cover 80% of parking lots in bigger cities in order to give the consumer an offer to easily find, navigate to a parking place, book and park, or pay this parking space. And the model we want to establish is Deutsche Telekom is going to invest in this infrastructure. So we are not delivering technology and ask somebody to buy it. We actually are going and investing in the sensor network, in the platform, and in the applications in order to bring this service to consumer, and then get this from sharing benefits or sharing cost savings with the cities, but also getting some service fees for premium service from consumers. And I think this is a way we need in order to speed up in bringing this really to life.
Yeah, so that
That's a
could be.
cellular beacon.
Sorry.
That's a cellular beacon.
Sorry?
Is that a cellular beacon?
Oh, sorry. This is based on narrowband IoT.
Okay.
So we basically, I said, I mean, there have been parking sensors around for years, but probably, to our experience, it was actually not delivering a positive business case so far. And one of the reasons for that was actually the energy consumption was too high. So you actually need electricity, and the lifetime of these sensors were too short. With narrowband IoT, and Deutsche Telekom is going to roll out narrowband IoT in every German city over the next 1.5 years. We actually have now a technology available which allows us to make this a positive case in the long run. It's
Interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much for presenting that. That could be one very exciting X in V2X.
Yeah, and this is just an example, right? I mean, you need to develop business developments around mobility, but I think it can be a blueprint in order how to make sure that we really now start to bring this to the consumer, because so far it hasn't reached the consumer, at least to my experience.
I'll ask you later if that has a Qualcomm chip in it.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, so there's something that I would like to elaborate on, because I picked up that Germans are special in many ways, which they actually are. So we are very concerned about data security and data privacy. I'm sure many of you are aware that many companies still have problems offering their products as they are. So when you talk about a data marketplace, I know that many people will probably ask, how is this happening? How is my data protected? So what do you think about a data marketplace?
Well, I mean, the first thing is, I mean, you're right, data privacy, data security is top issue, obviously. I mean, the one thing is, the question is where the data are stored. I mean, I don't know, I don't know whether it's common, but at least, I mean, what we at Deutsche Telekom did is we established cloud data centers in Germany, really to make sure that this is under the German data law, so to protect this data. I think this is one thing, this is kind of precondition. And then you basically need to implement processes where you first make sure that people are in the situation to decide whether their data are shared or not. And the other thing is that you need to make sure that actually the public can benefit from this data. So when I talk about this parking solution, we also agreed with the cities that we will share the data. So the data which are where the customer agreed that they are shared, we will make them public so that other companies can develop business models on top of that, and that the public can benefit from this data.
Yeah, maybe just to emphasize, when I said data marketplace, I didn't mean the Wild West on data. You as a consumer, you decide to opt into the marketplace. As a developer of an application, you decide to opt in. And then it's also in an enterprise and business setting, or maybe within an enterprise where it's slightly different. So I'm thinking consumer enterprise, but with some rules and boundaries.
Of course, I was just, wondering what could be the take by Deutsche Telekom.
I will say one other thing about the sharing of data that you mentioned earlier. So it'll be nice to see us get to a level of maturity where we share the data for the common good. And the initial kind of knee-jerk reaction of everybody is to get their own data, call their own data, and make that a differentiator. So it'll be nice to see common areas where we say, listen, we can accelerate our progress if we can just get together and share some common data, or at least try to organize the data in a way so it's mutually beneficial. I think that's one of the bigger challenges. There's a lot of parochialism now across the data sets, and everybody wants to make that their key differentiator.
Yeah. I would like to elaborate a little bit on 5G. You said that originally connectivity in a car used to be an emergency service, and then it has developed over time, or is going to develop over time to a content delivery system. It's potentially going to change ownership and essentially pave the way to autonomous driving, to stay in the lingo. So content, I'm clear, everyone wants to Netflix in their autonomous car. We all use it. The thing is, what I've been thinking about a lot is, especially here in rural areas in Germany, but also in the US, it's pretty hard to stay connected at all. How is that going to be different with 5G? And how is that going to be essential to V2X? Don't we need a fallback?
Yeah, that's an important question. It's a multi-part question. So if 5G, like any other cellular technology, is going to have coverage holes. So you're never going to get around that unless you completely cover the map. So that's always going to be a challenge. Obviously, 5G is going to come with some key benefits. The throughput that you mentioned. So downloading your data is going to be, downloading even intense data is going to be very fast. It's going to come with higher range. It's going to come with lower latency. Some real benefits that we're going to really empower some digital services, some real-time mission-critical digital services. It's going to be hard to get around the coverage holes in some remote places. And so autonomous solutions are going to have to be designed such that they don't require connectivity all the time, period. Because you're always going to be able to get it. You have to, for example, deep in a parking garage, there are techniques to be able to get the coverage down in the deep in the parking garages, but in remote areas. So autonomy itself, there's separate issues. One thing is the coverage of 5G, and the other one is what happens in autonomy if you have no coverage. And so all autonomous cars are going to have to benefit from the benefits of 5G, but also have to operate independent of any coverage. And even cellular V2X is a perfect example where there are direct mode. Vehicle to vehicle is a direct mode where you don't go through the network. Vehicle to infrastructure can be without the network. It could also be with the network. And vehicle to pedestrian can also be a direct mode without the network. So, a lot of the safety, as we look at these safety features being developed in cars, we always have to look at them and say, what if you're in an area where there is no network and mission critical things cannot rely on 24/7 complete coverage all the time. So that's already being incorporated in the autonomy plans.
And the other thing I was a bit wondering about is, communication from car to car. I believe that's going to happen. Communication car to cloud, no problem at all. Even infrastructure when it comes to, I don't know, red lights or whatever. The thing that I've been really wondering about is how do you connect pedestrians and cyclists? Would you like to, do you have an opinion? Is there a solution that you're working on?
Yeah, we're definitely working on that. I think connecting vehicles to pedestrian, it's really, you think of it from the use case perspective, that you're really trying to protect vulnerable road users. And that doesn't have to be vehicle to pedestrian. That could also be pedestrian to vehicle. So we definitely don't want people to take out their smartphones, look at their phone when they're crossing the road. We definitely don't want that, right? Although some people may do that anyways, in which case you can give them a warning on the phone. But I think there's also the other direction where you can protect the pedestrian by giving the car information about where people are. If you see somebody stepping into the road, somebody crossing when there's a red light, you can provide that as a warning on the dashboard for the vehicle. So it goes in two different ways when you look at the goal of protecting the vulnerable road users, pedestrian, bicyclists, and so forth. There's the other element that maybe in the future we don't have smartphones. Maybe we just have an earbud, or we have some other way of getting information. And so we shouldn't think of the world being, I'm only receiving my information on the smartphone, and therefore if I want to get information about vehicles or dangers ahead of me, I need to take out my smartphone. If you think a little bit further out, there are other ways that we can get the information. Ultimately, you need to transmit it to the person, but for you to consume the data may not necessarily be on the screen. It could be something in your ear, could be something in your clothing that you get sort of like a haptic feedback. So we should also think about different ways that we can provide that information to pedestrians.
Yeah, the key is that there's a radio in your cell phone and there's a radio in the car, so the two can talk without network intervention if that's the way we want to do it. But there's also, as we move closer to autonomy, there'll be an electronic envelope around the car with radar and LiDAR and camera, and there's many other ways to detect not only detect pedestrians, but also try to estimate their movement and where they're going to be. So this is just, cellular V2X is a wonderful technology. It is a non-line of sight, which means you can see things around the corner. So if a car's coming and it's not going to stop at a red light, your car can detect that and say, it looks like he doesn't have stopping distance, I should stop my car going into a red light. So it's incredibly enabling, powerful technology, but it's not end-all be-all. It's going to require a full sensor array. When I get asked, can a machine ever drive better than a human? The answer is, obviously, it'll be a period of time. I'm thinking a couple decades, honestly. But yeah, if you look at the sensing, we have 5 senses. We use about 1.5 of them when we're driving, maybe. Unless we're irritated from the meeting we just left, and it's like a half a sense. And so a car has undistracted sensors, envelope around it, including cellular V2X and including cameras and other things.
I mean, for me, while these things are very important for making driving more safe or making traffic in cities more safe, another aspect for me is, which kind of keeps me busy, is the question, how can we organize the traffic in cities in a more efficient way in order to make sure that we reduce or that we improve air quality and these kind of things. I mean, obviously, currently a very hot topic, right? And I mean, safety is a very important thing, but the other thing is, how can we really organize and how can we use technology to organize individual transportation in a different, much more efficient way. And for this, I think you need a combination of of the technologies you just mentioned. I mean, you need the consumer, which has a sensor, which is a smartphone, and you can talk with the consumer via the smartphone. I mean, in terms of radio. Sure. You need connected vehicles or connected buses or whatever, and you need a connected infrastructure as well, and 5G offers us the opportunity to do
You're right, though. It's going to take this cooperation. It used to be where 1 or 2 companies could make something happen, and now the network operators, and even 5G AA, it's the network operators, and it's the OEMs and the tier 1s and the technology providers, and that's the whole idea behind the 5G AA, is to get cellular V2X out there, and we all looked at each other and realized, hey, we can't do this alone. It's going to take, and then we have to work with the municipalities and the regulators, and you're right, it's a group lift, or a lot of this stuff isn't going to.
And another important aspect is, for me, nobody can solve this issue by himself. I mean, I just give you an example because this is most familiar to me, this parking topic I mentioned. So we did a quite intensive analysis on what consumers really need. And there were 2 key findings. First is they want to have an end-to-end coverage of the process, find, book, park, pay. That's how we call it. And the other thing is, then it was a clear outcome. You need to have a coverage of about 80% of the parking lots. Yeah. Otherwise, it's no value for the consumer. So can we cover 80% of the parking slots in a city with this? By no way. I mean, there are parking slots on street, off street. So you need to have an open architecture where different parties can come together in order to solve this
That's
issues.
right. That's
There is no way that somebody can do this on its own.
Autonomy is certainly one of those examples, no question about it, yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah, so or you said in your introduction statement that you don't see all of the aspects, all of the potential reflected at IAA, possibly? Did I understand you correctly?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there is something I would like to share with you that I originally wasn't planning on, just to maybe build a bridge between you guys that definitely live in the future to me who is maybe a couple of years ahead, but not that far in the future as you are, and the Joe Everyman that reads our actual newspapers or websites and has his first experience maybe using assistance in cars or using ride sharing. And there's that one letter that I received, an actual letter that I received last year from an actual elderly person. And he said to me, you're talking about autonomous driving so much. And I think it's so exciting, and I really, really want to use it. The thing is, I currently own an older car, and all I want is a cruise control that automatically maintains the distance to the car in front of me. And I was like, wait a minute, that's been in the market for 10 years. But not everyone can afford a Mercedes or a BMW that have that technology or have had that technology for the last 10 years. Some people only experience it for the first time now. So when you talk about autonomous driving, when we talk about autonomous driving, that's very, very scary for many people. How would you say, is there a way to address people and to get them up to speed so they aren't as scared when in a couple of years cars are actually going to start driving by themselves?
Yes.
Do you have any input for me?
Well, as much as you want to digitize things, you can't digitize humans. And so a lot of people ask me, will the technology be ready? That's the piece of cake. It's the changing the human mindset. There's this demo at CES this year that had a car with a steering wheel, and all of a sudden it collapsed and went into the dash. And everybody just looked at that and their eyes bugged out, because I can't imagine, how can I get in a car with no steering wheel? That's a scary thought. But the thing is that humans will acclimate. This is why I think it's going to go from level 1 to level 2, gracefully through level 3. Level 3 is kind of an inflection point, and then 4 and 5. And we get used to things progressively. The first thing we'll get used to is the highway autopilot mode, which is level 3 that you just discussed. And if I asked you 10 years ago, are you comfortable with the car braking itself? 10 years ago, you probably would have said, that's crazy talk. But now if you bought a car and they say, yeah, it brakes itself on the freeway or, in stop-and-go traffic, you'd probably be okay with that because you've already acclimated. But if I were to go to you and say, level 5 car, no steering wheel, jump in, let's go for a ride, you're going to be a little uptight 20 years from now. If you have a young child, you have to think whether they're ever going to need a driver's license. Certainly, I'm not a believer that 5 or 7 years something's going to happen, but I do believe level 5 in maybe 15 to the 20-year period. But we're going to acclimate just like anything else. That's the way. I don't think, there are some that think we're just going to jump to it quickly. I'm not one of those.
Yeah. Exactly, but in that phase of transition, our regular cars, for instance, I drive a 27-year-old Mercedes. It doesn't have any technology on board. It's a level 0 autonomous car. So when I drive around, am I going to be a danger to other people? Is that what's going to happen?
No, you can.
No, I don't think you're going to be a danger. But I think what's important is that if you drive your level 0 car, you somehow know what's around you. So I think the exterior design of the car will remain important. I think right now we like very much the exterior shiny part. The interior will become more important because as you're not driving yourself, the interior becomes more important as maybe an extension of your work or your home space. But the exterior will still remain important for sending messages to you as another driver, as a pedestrian. This is an autonomous car. This car has this capability, and maybe signaling where we use human gestures to signal. Right? The car needs to have a way to signal to also visually to pedestrians, so that you would recognize that even if the car cannot digitally talk to your car, it can sort of in an analog way talk to you.
Yes. May I Max, just give me this letter, because we don't have an automated distance control, but we have an aftermarket solution. So where this person can at least enjoy some connected service. So make sure that their car, even if it's 7 years old, gets connected right away.
Well, I'll definitely try it out on my Mercedes. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very
There's
much.
two things that could happen, just quickly, there's two things that could happen. The first one is that you could have a sensor retrofit kit to where you can minimally get off your level 0 and at least be able to be seen, broadcast and be seen, much like that puck actually. You could at least have that level. And the other thing is that all the autonomous cars, it'll be hybrid for a long period of time, right? My car may be autonomous and yours won't be. So the other thing is that we'll see you. So we'll be able to, we'll have the technology to see you. Our cameras or LiDAR, radar will pick you up. So you'll be fine. You'll be burning a lot of fuel, which isn't a good thing, but you'll be fine.
Thank you very much, all of you. I think this has been very exciting. I hope you agree. And yeah, let's see what's coming in the next years.